The dragon, the greatest of all serpents, is the devil, the king of all evil. It deals death with its poisonous breath and blow of its tail. This description was written in the 12th century by a French cleric. He regarded the dragon as the enemy of the pure animal, a creature so foul that death followed in its wake wheresoever it went. When this text was written, the notion of dragons as fearsome, death-dealing monsters was nothing new. Great serpentine creatures had been spoken of for centuries. Early references to dragon-like beasts can be found in ancient Babylonian, Egyptian, Chinese and Japanese accounts, as well as in classical Greek and Roman sources. Not all of these accounts describe the dragon as an evil creature. However, they all seem to agree that dragons were no ordinary animal. Rather, these creatures possessed awesome spiritual as well as physical strength. And far from being confined to mere legend, these creatures did indeed exist. As such, here are 5 supposed historical encounters with living dragons. Just outside the market town of Horsham in Sussex, England, lies St. Leonard's Forest. The forest, now a mere fragment of the ancient woodland which once extended across the area, was named after the French saint Léonard de Noblac. It was said that Saint Léonard once lived within the forest. According to the legend, the French hermit's spiritual solitude was disturbed by the presence of a great dragon, which also called the forest home. What followed was a long battle, which Léonard, despite being injured, won, thus earning him the reputation of a dragon slayer. Many believed his feat to represent the slaying of the last dragon in England. This was in the 6th century. However, over 1,000 years later, dragons in St. Leonard's Forest were still spoken of. Not only that, several local residents claimed that one particularly fearsome specimen still haunted the area. Dating to 1614, True and Wonderful describes a strange and monstrous dragon said to reside in St. Leonard's Forest at the time of publication. Believed to have been bred in a vast and unfrequented area of the forest, in amongst overgrown hollows, the serpent-like creature was claimed to have been seen by multiple witnesses. Described as being known to roam an area measuring 3 or 4 miles around its forest lair, the dragon had supposedly been seen within half a mile of the market town of Horsham. 2 unfortunate souls, a man and a woman, were even thought to have been killed by the beast, after their bodies were discovered poisoned and very much swelled, but not preyed upon. The author of the pamphlet detailed how the great serpent, always in his track or path, left a glutinous and slimy matter, similar to that of a snail. The creature's excretions were said to have been very corrupt and offensive to scent, with the ability to putrefy air and produce a poisonous miasma which was dangerous to inhale. In addition to this putrid matter, the fearsome beast was known to cast his venom about 4 rod from him, the equivalent of 20 meters or 66 feet. Presumably, this was how the unfortunate man and woman had met their end. 2 dogs, it is also claimed in the pamphlet, met a similar fate when they and their owner went to the forest seeking to slay the monster. As for its appearance, the dragon was reputed to be 9 feet or rather more in length, thicker in the middle and somewhat smaller at both ends. Its back, according to those who were fortunate enough to survive witnessing it, was covered in blackish scales. Under his belly, the scales appeared to be red. The author of the text also expressed concern at the 2 great bunches which had been observed on either side of the dragon. Each as big as a large football, it was feared that the 2 bulges would in time grow to wings, and thus enable the creature to cause even more destruction. The eventual fate of the dragon, however, was not recorded. If a great and fearsome serpent did live in St. Leonard's Forest in the 17th century, what became of it and of the people it lived alongside is not known. Alexander the Great was king of the ancient Greek kingdom of Macedon in the 4th century BC. He is best remembered for his colossal military campaign, which lasted for most of his reign and led to the creation of one of the largest empires of the ancient world. Undefeated in battle, Alexander's dominion eventually stretched from Greece to northwestern India and down into northeastern Africa. In the course of his campaign through Asia and Africa, Alexander the Great witnessed and indeed engineered many great and terrible things: the fall of cities and kingdoms, the slaughter of entire populations, and even, if reports are to be believed, a dragon. It was during his time in India that the great military leader supposedly encountered the beast. A description can be found in De Natura Animalium on the nature of animals, a text containing brief stories of natural history written by the Roman author Claudius Aelianus. According to the text, the great serpent which Alexander encountered lived in a cavern which was regarded as sacred by the Indians. Since they paid it great and superstitious reverence, they begged the conquering king not to attack the creature. Alexander assented to their wish. It was when the army passed by the cavern that Alexander and his men supposedly caught sight of the great creature. Having caused a noise whilst passing by, the serpent, whose hearing was said to be the sharpest of all animals, became immediately aware of the men outside its lair. It is said that the beast put its head out of the cavern and hissed and snorted so violently that all were terrified and confounded. And certainly, according to the description by Aelianus, the creature would have been terrifying to behold. The visible part of the serpent alone was reported to measure 70 cubits, the rough equivalent of 32 meters or 105 feet in length. The rest of its immense body remained within the cavern. At any rate, its eyes are said to have been the size of a large round Macedonian shield. Whilst India is known for being home to several large reptile species, a creature of the size described in On the Nature of Animals is unprecedented. The world's longest venomous snake, the king cobra, is one such animal who roams the forests of India. Adult snakes can grow between 3 and 5 meters long, making what should be a fear-inducing length appear minute next to the 32-meter-long serpent which Alexander and his men confronted. So what did the ancient king encounter during his campaign in India? Did he catch sight of a dragon? Despite modern associations between dragons and fire, these great beasts have not always been thought of as fire-breathing. Foul odours, poisonous venom, and raw brute strength are instead often found in historical records, described as the methods by which a dragon may take a human life. Yet, that said, there is one archaic text which makes a connection between dragons and fire. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is a collection of annals in Old English chronicling the history of the Anglo-Saxons. It is in the Peterborough Chronicle that a remarkable story can be found, which relates the day that fiery dragons were supposedly seen over the skies of Northumbria. The entry in the Chronicle dates to 793 and detailed how immense whirlwinds and flashes of lightning and fiery dragons manifest over Northumbria and greatly terrified the people. At the time, these great spectacles were regarded as omens, and indeed, as the Chronicle goes on to relate, soon after the dragons were witnessed, a great famine followed. Not only that, the holy island of Lindisfarne, a tidal island off the northeast coast of England, was raided by Vikings. Not long after that, in the same year, on the 8th of June, the ravages of heathen men wretchedly destroyed God's church on Lindisfarne with plunder and carnage. In the centuries since the Chronicle was written, there has been much debate as to the true nature of the dragons described in the text. One suggestion is that the dragons, rather than being physical creatures, were instead natural phenomena such as cloud formations, shooting stars, or even the northern lights. Yet, for those who believe that the Chronicle offers a more literal description, there are plenty of other stories of dragons around this time and area. Further south, just outside the village of Handale, are woods said to have once been haunted by a great half-dragon, half-serpent, who would feast on local maidens. The precise origins of the legend of the Handale serpent are unknown, however they help to demonstrate a long connection between dragons and the north of England. Another similar tale is that of the lantern worm, a monstrous creature said to have coiled itself around a hill, not too far from where the fiery dragons were witnessed in 793. Considering the rich history of dragon stories and reports in the north of England, what exactly were the fiery dragons seen in the sky that day in 793? In China, dragons are said to influence every aspect of life. Representing the highest spiritual power, the Chinese dragon can represent the sun, the heavens, and the life-giving rain. In addition to their complex mythological and symbolic status, many in China have regarded dragons as actual living beings, shape-shifting creatures with the ability to make themselves invisible. In ancient times, dragons were regarded as especially important, with evidence suggesting that people made offerings to these great and spiritual creatures. The ancient Chinese philosopher-historian Wang Fu described dragons as having horns which resemble those of a stag. The beast's head was supposedly like that of a camel, his eyes those of the demon, his neck that of the snake. Far from being confined to ancient times, the existence of dragons in China was still very much openly discussed centuries later. In 1271, a 17-year-old Marco Polo set off from Venice with his father and uncle for Asia. It was during his travels over the next few years that Marco Polo supposedly encountered Oriental dragons. Discussing his adventures years later in his book, The Travels of Marco Polo, Polo describes arriving in the province of Karajan, where great serpents of such vast size were said to live. Relating the existence of these great serpents from what seems to be personal experience, Polo states that the creatures strike fear into those who see them, for they are not only hideous to behold, but also long and big. You may be assured that some of them are 10 paces in length. Some are more and some less. They have 2 forelegs near the head, but for foot nothing but a claw, like the claw of a hawk or that of a lion. The head is very big, and the eyes are bigger than a great loaf of bread. The mouth is large enough to swallow a man whole, and is garnished with great teeth. According to Polo's interactions with local merchants, the gall of these great serpents was extremely valuable as a precious medicine. As such, many huntsmen were known to seek out these fearsome beasts, hunting them at night when they emerged from their underground lairs. Despite Polo's accounts having been previously criticized for being overly fanciful and possibly fraudulent, modern studies have revealed that his travels are remarkably accurate. Details such as currencies used, salt productions and revenues have proven to be not only accurate but unique to Polo, with such detailed descriptions not being found in other non-Chinese sources from the time. All of this makes one wonder whether or not his descriptions of great serpents were also accurate, and if Marco Polo truly did encounter the long-revered dragons of China. Dragons once allegedly plagued the entire country of Wales. For centuries, these incredible creatures have formed a central part of Welsh folklore, and have even become the symbol of the nation. After all, according to legend, there is a dragon sleeping in the midst of Wales. According to a medieval book that contains various oral traditions from Wales, there once was an ancient Welsh king who consulted his brother, the King of France, about the troubles in his kingdom. The French king told him that his problems were caused by two dragons fighting in his lands, a native Welsh dragon and a foreign dragon. Thus, he advised his brother to measure his dominion and find the exact centre. There, he instructed him to dig a pit and place into it a large cauldron filled with the best mead. It was then, said the French king, that the two fighting dragons would come and battle each other. After wearying themselves with fierce and furious fighting, they will drink up the whole of the mead, and after that they will sleep. Therefore do thou immediately fold the covering around them, and bury them in the strongest place in thy dominions, and hide them in the earth. As long as they abide in that strong place, no plague shall come. According to the tale, the Welsh king did as his brother suggested, and peace came to the land. Many years later, it was said that during the construction of a castle, the legendary Merlin discovered the two dragons sleeping, a red Welsh dragon and a white Saxon dragon. The remains of this castle, allegedly built by Merlin, are said today to be located in a valley near a group of mountains known in English as the Rivals. Since the emergence of this legend, the red dragon has been the national symbol of Wales. However, for some, dragons are not merely legend. As recently as the beginning of the 20th century, there were many people who claimed to have witnessed dragons in Wales. Someone who was keen to explore and preserve these reports was the folklorist Marie Trevelyan. It was in her book concerning Welsh folk stories that she documented personal testimonies from several people who claimed to have had experiences with dragons. The area around Penllyn Castle in Glamorgan had, according to the people she met, a particular reputation for being a haunt for these fearsome beasts. It was close to here that Trevelyan documented the testimony of an old man who remembered seeing winged serpents in his youth, describing them as looking as though they were covered with jewels of all sorts. Some of them had crests sparkling with all colours of the rainbow. When disturbed, they glided swiftly, sparkling all over to their hiding places. When angry, they flew over people's heads with outspread wings, bright and sometimes with eyes too, like the feathers in a peacock's tail. When in discussion with Trevelyan, the old man was insistent that these creatures were not mere stories, but rather a real live menace, as bad as foxes for poultry. He even claimed that his father and uncle had killed some of them in his youth. Now an old man, he believed that the incredible yet pesky beasts had gone extinct due to overhunting. Trevelyan indicated that many old inhabitants of the area had a surprisingly matter-of-fact attitude towards the creatures. She interviewed an old woman who spoke in a similar way as the old man about the dragon-like creatures. One story she recalled involved her grandfather, who went to hunt one of these animals with his brothers near Penmark. After shooting it down from the skies and killing it, the old lady explained that its shiny skin and feathers decorated her home whilst she was growing up, eventually being thrown away after her grandfather died. Like the old man, she spoke of how livestock was often killed by the fearsome winged beasts. As such, they were often hunted by local people to protect their animals, and also in search of the treasure that was rumoured to be close to their lairs. The sober and almost mundane manner in which dragons were described by some of the elderly inhabitants of Wales at the time in which Trevelyan was writing is striking. Were they merely poking fun at a researcher willing to listen to the ramblings of the elderly, or is it possible that great winged serpents once existed in Wales and had merely gone the way of the dodo, whose extinction was caused by humans? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this and have not done so already, don't forget to subscribe for more of the paranormal. You can also sign up to our newsletter to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you cannot wait until my next video, why not check out the one suggested on screen now? Until next time.